The Forgotten Library of Atlantis. In the realm of dreams and ancient mysteries lies the Forgotten Library of Atlantis. This enchanting story unfolds in a world where the lost city of Atlantis is not just a legend but a place brimming with secrets. Our protagonist, a young and curious scholar named Elara, stumbles upon a hidden map that whispers of the existence of a long, forgotten library within the depths of Atlantis. Drawn by an insatiable thirst for knowledge, she embarks on a journey to uncover the truths hidden in the library's dusty tomes. As Elara delves deeper into the heart of Atlantis, she discovers a world frozen in time. The library, with its towering shelves filled with ancient scrolls and books, holds the accumulated wisdom of a bygone civilization. Each page she turns reveals stories of magic, science, and the harmonious existence of man and nature that the Atlanteans once cherished. The narrative gently weaves through Elara's adventures in the library, the encounters with the echoes of Atlantean spirits, and her own personal growth. With a slow-paced, soothing prose, the story invites readers to relax, unwind, and let their minds be carried away to a world of wonder, making it the perfect read to ease into a peaceful slumber. Chapter 1: The Enigmatic Map's Call. Elara, a young and inquisitive soul, resided in a quaint village nestled on the fringes of an ancient forest. Her abode, a small, stone-built cottage, was surrounded by wild flowers that swayed gently in the breeze. The village was a haven of simplicity, with its cobblestone streets and friendly inhabitants. But Elara's heart yearned for something more, a world beyond the familiar sights and sounds of her home. Elara's days were a blend of tranquility and intellectual pursuit. She spent her mornings in the village's tiny library, poring over the few, well-worn books that lined its shelves. These books were her windows to different worlds, filled with stories of heroes, far-off lands, and ancient mysteries. In the afternoons, she would wander through the forest, listening to the songs of the birds and the rustling of leaves, finding a strange comfort in the solitude of nature. One overcast morning, as the clouds hung low over the village, Elara decided to explore the abandoned mill on the outskirts. The mill had been silent for years, its large wooden wheels motionless. Its exterior was covered in ivy, giving it an air of mystery. Elara had always been drawn to this place, feeling that it held secrets waiting to be unearthed. As she pushed open the creaking door of the mill, a musty smell wafted out. The interior was dimly lit, with shafts of sunlight piercing through the holes in the roof. The air was thick with dust, which danced in the sunlight like tiny particles of gold. Elara's eyes adjusted to the semi-darkness, and she began to rummage through the old tools and broken machinery that lay scattered around. In a corner, hidden beneath a pile of old sacks, she noticed a small, rectangular object. Curiosity getting the better of her, she bent down and pulled it out. It was a map, its edges frayed and tattered. The paper was yellowed with age, and it felt brittle under her touch. At first glance, it seemed like an ordinary map, with lines and markings that could have represented any landscape. But as she looked closer, she realized that this was no ordinary map. Strange symbols, unlike any she had ever seen, were etched across the surface. They were not like the simple runes or alphabets she had studied in her books. These symbols seemed to have a life of their own, almost pulsating with a faint, otherworldly light. Elara's heart skipped a beat. She had always been fascinated by ancient legends and lost civilizations, and this map seemed like a portal to a world she had only dreamed of. She carried the map over to a patch of brighter light and examined it more intently. There was a particular area on the map that was marked with a series of intricate symbols. They formed a shape that resembled a large, domed building. Could this be the location of a long, lost treasure? Or perhaps a place filled with ancient knowledge? Elara's mind raced with possibilities. Determined to uncover the meaning of the symbols, Elara took the map back to her cottage. She spread it out on the small wooden table in her living room and surrounded herself with the few books on ancient languages that she had borrowed from the village elder. The elder, an old and wise man named Grayson, had spent his life studying the history and lore of the region. His collection of books was a treasure trove of information, although it was by no means comprehensive. Elara spent hours poring over the books, comparing the symbols on the map with the illustrations and descriptions in the texts. It was a painstaking process, but she was driven by a sense of excitement and anticipation. Slowly but surely, she began to make some progress. The symbols, she discovered, were part of an ancient script that was said to be associated with the lost city of Atlantis. Atlantis. The very name sent a shiver down Elara's spine. The legend of Atlantis, a great and advanced civilization that had once thrived but was swallowed by the sea, had always captured her imagination. According to the stories, Atlantis was a place of great knowledge, where the people had mastered the forces of nature and achieved a level of technology and wisdom far beyond their time. And now, it seemed that this map might hold the key to uncovering one of its greatest secrets. As the sun began to set outside her window, casting a warm, orange glow over the room, Elara made a decision. She would follow the map and find the place it was leading her to. She knew that the journey would be long and fraught with uncertainties, but she couldn't ignore the pull of the unknown. With a sense of calm determination, she began to prepare for her adventure. She packed a small backpack with essentials, a water skin, some dried fruits and nuts, a warm cloak, and a small dagger for protection. She also took with her a journal and a quill, determined to document every step of her journey. As she sat on her bed, looking at the map one last time, the symbols seemed to glow even brighter, as if encouraging her to embark on this quest. That night, as Elara lay in bed, she couldn't fall asleep. Her mind was filled with images of what lay ahead. She imagined ancient cities hidden in the depths of the forest, filled with treasures and knowledge waiting to be discovered. She thought about the people of Atlantis, their lives, and their secrets. The soft rustling of the leaves outside her window lulled her into a half-asleep state, and she drifted off into a world of dreams, where she was already on the journey to find the place the map was leading her. The next morning, Elara woke up with a start. The sun was streaming through the window, casting a golden light over her face. She quickly got dressed and made her way outside. The air was fresh and filled with the sweet smell of wild flowers. She took a deep breath, filling her lungs with the morning air, and set off on her journey. The map led her deep into the forest. The path was narrow and overgrown with wild flowers and ferns. The tall trees on either side of the path formed a natural canopy, filtering the sunlight into dappled patterns on the ground. As she walked, she could hear the gentle chirping of birds and the soft rustling of leaves under her feet. The forest was alive with the sounds of nature, and Elara felt a sense of peace wash over her, despite the uncertainty of what lay ahead. As the day wore on, the forest grew darker and more mysterious. The trees seemed to close in on her, their branches reaching out like gnarled fingers. The path became steeper, and Elara had to climb over large boulders and through thick underbrush. But she pressed on, her eyes fixed on the map in her hand. Suddenly, she heard a strange noise up ahead. It was a soft, melodious sound, like the singing of a distant choir. Elara's heart skipped a beat. Could this be a sign that she was getting closer to the place the map was leading her? She quickened her pace, following the sound. As she rounded a bend in the path, she came across a small clearing. In the center of the clearing was a large, ancient tree. Its trunk was gnarled and twisted, and its branches reached out like the arms of a giant. Hanging from the branches were dozens of small, crystal-like formations. As the wind blew, they tinkled softly, creating the beautiful sound she had heard. Elara walked closer to the tree, her eyes wide with wonder. The crystals seemed to glow with an inner light, and she could feel a strange energy emanating from them. She reached out to touch one of the crystals, and as her fingers made contact with it, she felt a jolt of energy shoot through her body. For a moment, she was startled, but then she realized that the energy was not harmful. In fact, it seemed to fill her with a sense of purpose and determination. She knew that this was a sign that she was on the right track. The tree, with its crystal adornments, seemed to be a marker, a signpost on her journey to the unknown. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the forest, Elara decided to make camp for the night. She found a small, sheltered spot near the tree and set up her tent. She gathered some dry leaves and twigs and started a small campfire. As she sat by the fire, watching the flames dance, she thought about the journey so far and what lay ahead. The soft sound of the crystal formations in the wind lulled her into a peaceful state, and soon, she was fast asleep, dreaming of the wonders that awaited her on the path guided by the enigmatic map. Chapter 2: The Mysterious Forest's Secrets. Elara woke to the gentle tinkling of the crystal, like formations in the early morning breeze. The sun's rays filtered through the canopy of the ancient tree, casting a dappled light over her campsite. She stretched, feeling refreshed despite the hard ground beneath her. The events of the previous day rushed back to her: the discovery of the map, the journey through the forest, and the encounter with the strange, glowing tree. As she packed up her camp, Elara couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement. The forest, which had seemed so mysterious and a bit daunting the day before, now held a promise of adventure. She took one last look at the tree, its crystals still shimmering softly, as if bidding her farewell and good luck on her journey. The map in her hand was her compass, and she followed its markings deeper into the forest. The path became even more overgrown, but Elara was undeterred. She used her dagger to cut through the thick vines that blocked her way, her determination growing with each step. As she walked, Elara noticed that the forest was changing. The trees were no longer the familiar oaks and pines but strange, gnarled trees with bark that seemed to be made of a smooth, almost metallic substance. Their leaves were a deep purple color, and they emitted a faint, sweet fragrance. The underbrush was filled with strange flowers, some with petals that glowed in the dim light of the forest. Elara was in awe of this new landscape. She had never seen such plants and trees in her life. As she stopped to examine one of the glowing flowers, she heard a soft rustling in the bushes nearby. Her heart skipped a beat, and she instinctively reached for her dagger. Slowly, a small creature emerged from the bushes. It was about the size of a cat, with soft, white fur and large, almond-shaped eyes that glowed a gentle blue. Its ears were long and pointed, and it had a bushy tail that twitched nervously. Elara stared at the creature, her fear subsiding as she realized that it seemed more curious about her than threatening. The creature approached her cautiously, sniffing the air around her. Elara held her breath, not sure what to expect. Then, to her surprise, the creature let out a soft, purring sound, and rubbed against her leg. Elara couldn't help but smile. She bent down and gently stroked the creature's fur. It was incredibly soft, like silk against her skin. "What are you?" Elara asked softly, as if expecting the creature to answer. The creature looked up at her with its big, blue eyes and let out another soft sound. Elara felt a strange connection to this mysterious creature. She wondered if it was a sign, or perhaps a guide on her journey. Deciding to keep the creature with her, Elara continued on her way. The creature followed her closely, sometimes running ahead to sniff around the bushes or trees. As they walked, Elara noticed that the path was leading them towards a large, rocky outcrop. The rocks were covered in strange markings, similar to the symbols on the map. Elara approached the rocks cautiously. She ran her fingers over the markings, trying to decipher them. The symbols seemed to tell a story, but she couldn't quite understand it yet. As she was studying the markings, the creature let out a loud chirp and ran towards a small opening between two of the rocks. Elara followed the creature, her curiosity getting the better of her. The opening was narrow, and she had to squeeze through it. On the other side, she found herself in a small, hidden valley. The valley was filled with a soft, golden light, and in the center, there was a small, clear pond. The water in the pond was so clear that she could see the bottom, which was covered in smooth, colorful stones. Around the pond, there were more of the strange, metallic, barked trees, and the air was filled with the sweet fragrance of the purple, leaved plants. Elara walked towards the pond, her eyes fixed on the beautiful sight. As she got closer, she noticed that there was something strange about the water. It seemed to be moving, not just with the gentle breeze, but as if there was some hidden current beneath the surface. Elara bent down to dip her hand into the water. As her fingers touched the surface, she felt a strange energy. It was a warm, soothing energy that seemed to flow through her body. She closed her eyes, allowing the energy to wash over her. In that moment, she felt a sense of peace and clarity. When she opened her eyes, she saw that the creature had jumped into the pond and was swimming around happily. Its white fur seemed to glow even brighter in the water. Elara watched the creature for a while, a smile on her face. This hidden valley was like a little piece of paradise, a place she never would have found if it weren't for the map and the strange creature. As the day wore on, Elara realized that she needed to continue her journey. She called the creature out of the pond, and it obediently came to her side. She took one last look around the valley, memorizing every detail of this magical place. Then, she found the path on the other side of the valley and started walking again. The path led her up a gentle slope. As she climbed, she could feel the air getting cooler. The trees around her were changing once again. They were now tall, slender trees with branches that reached up towards the sky like the arms of supplicants. Their leaves were a pale green, almost white in color, and they made a soft, whispering sound as the wind blew through them. Elara continued to follow the map, her steps determined. The mysterious creature bounded ahead of her, its presence a comforting reminder that she was not alone on this journey. As the sun started to set once more, Elara knew that she needed to find a place to camp for the night. She looked around and noticed a large, hollow tree trunk nearby. It seemed like a perfect place to shelter for the night. She made her way towards it and peeked inside. The inside of the trunk was dry and spacious enough for her to sleep comfortably. She gathered some dry leaves and made a makeshift bed. The creature curled up at her feet, and Elara lay down, looking up at the stars through the opening in the tree trunk. As she closed her eyes, her mind was filled with the images of the day, the strange trees, the glowing flowers, the mysterious creature, and the hidden valley. She knew that there were more wonders and secrets waiting to be discovered on her journey. With a sense of excitement and anticipation, she drifted off to sleep, the soft whispering of the pale-leaved trees lulling her into a peaceful slumber. As the night deepened, Elara had a strange dream. She saw herself in a large, domed building filled with shelves upon shelves of books and scrolls. The air was thick with the smell of old parchment, and a soft, golden light illuminated the room. She walked through the aisles, her hands gently touching the books. Each book seemed to hold a piece of knowledge, a story waiting to be told. Suddenly, she heard a voice calling her name. She turned around, but there was no one there. The voice called out again, and she followed it. It led her to a large, ornate door at the end of the room. As she reached the door, it slowly opened, revealing a blinding light. She shielded her eyes with her hand and stepped forward into the light. Elara woke up with a start. The dream had felt so real. She looked around the hollow tree trunk, her heart pounding. The creature at her feet stirred and looked up at her with its big, blue eyes. Elara took a deep breath, trying to calm herself. She knew that the dream was a sign, a glimpse of what awaited her at the end of her journey. As the first rays of dawn started to peek through the trees, Elara got up. She stretched and packed her things. The creature jumped up and followed her out of the tree trunk. Elara looked at the map once again. The markings on the map seemed to be leading her even deeper into the forest. With a new sense of determination, she set off on the next leg of her journey, eager to uncover the secrets that lay ahead. As she walked, she thought about the dream. The domed building filled with books and scrolls. Could that be the place the map was leading her to? The Forgotten Library of Atlantis? She couldn't wait to find out. The forest around her seemed to be filled with new energy, as if it was also eager for her to continue her quest. The mysterious creature bounded ahead, leading the way, and Elara followed, ready to face whatever challenges and wonders awaited her. Chapter 3: The Approach to the Lost City. The morning sun cast long shadows through the forest as Elara and her furry companion continued their journey. The pale, leaved trees gradually gave way to a more familiar landscape of ancient oaks and towering pines, yet the air still held an otherworldly quality. Elara's mind was filled with the vivid dream she'd had the previous night, the vision of the domed building and its countless scrolls and books fueling her determination. The path, though still overgrown in parts, seemed more defined, as if the forest itself was guiding her towards her destination. The mysterious creature, now affectionately named Lumos by Elara for its glowing eyes, scurried ahead, sniffing the ground and occasionally looking back as if to ensure she was following. As they walked, Elara noticed a change in the sounds of the forest. The usual chirping of birds and rustling of leaves was replaced by a soft, rhythmic humming. It was a sound that seemed to come from deep within the forest, a sound that both soothed and intrigued her. She quickened her pace, Lumos matching her stride with excited leaps. After a while, the forest opened up into a wide, grassy plain. In the distance, Elara could see a range of mountains. The sunlight glinted off something on the slopes of the mountains, something that looked like a series of large, white structures. Her heart skipped a beat. Could this be the location of the lost city of Atlantis? As she approached the mountains, the structures became more distinct. They were large, marble-like buildings, some in ruins, but others still standing tall. The architecture was unlike anything she had ever seen. The buildings had a flowing, organic design, with curves and arches that seemed to blend seamlessly with the natural surroundings. Elara stepped onto the outskirts of what was once a great city. The ground was paved with large, flat stones, some of which were cracked and overgrown with weeds. She walked through the silent streets, her footsteps echoing through the desolate landscape. Lumos stayed close by her side, its ears twitching nervously at every new sound. As she explored the city, Elara came across a large, circular plaza. In the center of the plaza was a massive statue. The statue depicted a man, his arms outstretched as if embracing the world. His face was serene, and his eyes seemed to look out into the distance with a wisdom that transcended time. Elara stood in front of the statue, looking up at it in awe. She could feel a sense of power and history emanating from it. Suddenly, Lumos let out a low growl. Elara turned around, her hand instinctively reaching for her dagger. She saw a group of small, shadowy figures emerging from the ruins of a nearby building. They were about the size of children, but their movements were quick and furtive. Their eyes glowed a deep red, and they seemed to be whispering to each other in a language Elara couldn't understand. Elara stood her ground, her heart pounding in her chest. She had no idea if these creatures were friendly or hostile. As the figures approached, she noticed that they were carrying small, glowing orbs in their hands. The orbs cast a strange, purple light over the plaza. One of the figures, slightly larger than the others, stepped forward. It looked up at Elara, its red eyes studying her intently. Then, to her surprise, it spoke in a language that Elara could understand. "Who are you, and what brings you to this place?" the figure asked, its voice soft but with an underlying edge. Elara took a deep breath. "I'm Elara. I'm following a map that led me here. I seek the Forgotten Library of Atlantis," she replied, trying to sound confident. The figure looked at her for a long moment, then turned to the other figures and whispered something. They all nodded in unison. The lead figure turned back to Elara. "The Library of Atlantis is a sacred place. Few have ever found it, and fewer still have been allowed to enter. But you carry an air of destiny about you. We will take you to the entrance, but you must promise to respect the knowledge that lies within." Elara nodded eagerly. "I promise. I only want to learn from the wisdom of the Atlanteans," she said. The figures motioned for her to follow them. They led her through the ruins of the city, past crumbling walls and broken columns. As they walked, Elara noticed that the city was filled with more signs of its former glory. There were murals on the walls of the buildings, depicting scenes of the Atlantean civilization, their daily lives, their scientific achievements, and their connection to nature. After a while, they came to a large, stone-built structure. The entrance was blocked by a massive door, inscribed with the same strange symbols that Elara had seen on the map and the rocks in the forest. The lead figure approached the door and placed its hand on one of the symbols. The symbol began to glow, and slowly, the door creaked open. A cool, musty air rushed out from inside the building. Elara looked inside, but all she could see was darkness. The lead figure turned to her. "Beyond this door lies the path to the library. But be warned, the journey is not without its challenges. You must face your fears and prove yourself worthy of the knowledge that awaits," it said. Elara took a deep breath. She knew that this was the moment she had been waiting for. She stepped forward, with Lumos by her side. As she entered the building, the door closed behind her with a loud thud. The only light came from the glowing orbs that the shadowy figures had given her. The corridor inside the building was long and narrow. The walls were lined with more of the strange symbols, and as Elara walked, she could feel a strange energy coursing through her. The air was thick with the weight of history, and she could almost sense the presence of the Atlanteans who had once walked these halls. After a while, the corridor opened up into a large, circular chamber. In the center of the chamber, there was a pool of water. The water was black as night, and it seemed to be swirling with a strange, unearthly energy. Elara approached the pool cautiously. As she got closer, she could see her reflection in the water, but it was distorted, as if the water was showing her not just her physical self but also her inner fears and desires. Suddenly, the water in the pool started to rise. It formed a large, human-like shape, its eyes glowing a bright blue. The figure looked at Elara and spoke in a deep, booming voice. "You seek the knowledge of the Atlanteans. But first, you must answer a question. What is the true purpose of knowledge?" Elara thought for a moment. She remembered all the books she had read, all the stories she had heard about the importance of knowledge. "The true purpose of knowledge," she said slowly, "is to bring understanding, to foster growth, and to create harmony between all things. It should be used to better the world and all its inhabitants, not for personal gain or to cause harm." The figure in the water seemed to consider her answer. Then, to her relief, it nodded. "Your answer is true. You may pass." The figure dissolved back into the water, and the pool returned to its normal state. Elara let out a sigh of relief. She continued on her way, following the corridor on the other side of the chamber. As she walked, she couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement. She was one step closer to the Forgotten Library of Atlantis. Lumos seemed to sense her excitement and jumped up and down beside her. The corridor led her to another door. This door was smaller than the previous one, but it was just as ornately decorated with symbols. Elara placed her hand on the door, and it slowly opened. Beyond the door, she saw a long, spiral staircase leading downwards. The staircase was made of a smooth, white stone, and it seemed to glow with a faint light. Elara started to descend the staircase. The air grew cooler as she went deeper, and the sound of her footsteps echoed through the quiet. She had no idea how long the staircase was, but she kept walking, her determination unwavering. After what seemed like an eternity, the staircase ended. Elara found herself in a large, dimly lit room. The room was filled with shelves upon shelves of books, scrolls, and ancient tablets. The smell of old parchment and dust filled the air, and Elara knew that she had finally found the Forgotten Library of Atlantis. She walked through the aisles, her eyes wide with wonder. Each shelf held a treasure trove of knowledge, waiting to be discovered. She reached out and picked up a scroll. As she unrolled it, she saw that it was written in the same ancient language that she had been studying. With a sense of excitement, she began to read, eager to uncover the secrets of the Atlantean civilization. Lumos sat at her feet, watching as she delved into the wisdom of a lost world. As she read, Elara realized that the knowledge in these scrolls was not just about science and technology but also about philosophy, spirituality, and the interconnectedness of all things. The Atlanteans had been a people who had understood the importance of balance and harmony in all aspects of life. She knew that this knowledge could change the world, and she was determined to share it with others. As the hours passed, Elara became completely engrossed in the scrolls. She read about the Atlanteans' mastery of energy, their ability to communicate with nature, and their understanding of the human mind. It was a wealth of knowledge that she could scarcely believe she was holding in her hands. But as she continued to read, she also realized that there was a great responsibility that came with this knowledge. She knew that she couldn't just take the scrolls and leave. She had to find a way to preserve this knowledge and make it accessible to the world in a way that would honor the legacy of the Atlanteans. With a new sense of purpose, Elara decided to spend more time in the library, studying as much as she could. She would document the most important scrolls, translate them into a language that others could understand, and then find a way to share this knowledge with the world. As she sat in the quiet library, surrounded by the wisdom of a lost civilization, Elara knew that her life would never be the same again. Chapter 4: Unveiling the Atlantean Wisdom and the New Mission. Elara was completely immersed in the world of the Atlantean scrolls. The library, with its rows upon rows of ancient knowledge, seemed to be a universe of its own. The soft glow of the orbs that the shadowy figures had given her illuminated the pages as she carefully turned them, her eyes devouring the wisdom inscribed on them. As she delved deeper into the scrolls, Elara discovered that the Atlanteans had a profound understanding of the forces of nature. They had harnessed the power of the elements, earth, air, fire, and water, in ways that were both sophisticated and harmonious. One scroll detailed their methods of using crystal-based technologies to channel and store energy from the sun, moon, and stars. These crystals, they believed, were conduits of a universal energy that connected all things. Another scroll spoke of their unique approach to agriculture. The Atlanteans had developed a system of farming that worked in tandem with the natural rhythms of the land. They used no harmful chemicals but instead relied on a deep understanding of the soil, the seasons, and the symbiotic relationships between plants and animals. Their fields were said to have been incredibly fertile, producing an abundance of food with minimal effort. Elara was also fascinated by the Atlanteans' views on spirituality. They saw the universe as a living, breathing entity, and every being within it as a part of this greater whole. Their spiritual practices were centered around maintaining a connection to this universal energy, through meditation, rituals, and a life of service to others. As she read, Elara couldn't help but compare the Atlantean way of life to the world she had come from. The modern world seemed so focused on progress and material gain that it had lost touch with the natural world and the deeper meaning of existence. She knew that sharing the Atlantean wisdom could be a game changer, not just for her small village but for the entire world. Lumos, who had been patiently sitting by her side, suddenly let out a soft chirp. Elara looked up from the scroll she was reading and noticed that the orbs were starting to dim. She realized that she had been so engrossed in the scrolls that she had lost track of time. It was likely that the orbs were running out of power. She quickly decided to make a plan. She knew that she couldn't leave the library just yet. There was still so much to learn, so much knowledge to document. She needed a more reliable source of light. Remembering the crystal-based energy systems described in the scrolls, she began to search through the library for any information on creating a simple light-emitting device. After some searching, she found a scroll that detailed the basic principles of crystal-powered illumination. It described how to select the right type of crystal, how to charge it with energy, and how to shape it into a device that could emit light. Elara was excited. If she could create this device, she could continue her studies without interruption. She started to look around the library for the materials she needed. To her surprise, she found a small cache of crystals hidden away in a corner. They were of different shapes and sizes, and some of them seemed to pulsate with a faint energy. She selected a few that seemed suitable for her purpose and began to follow the instructions in the scroll. It was a painstaking process. She had to carefully carve and shape the crystals, then use a special incantation-like process to charge them with energy. As she worked, she could feel the energy of the crystals coursing through her hands. It was a strange but exhilarating feeling. After what seemed like hours, Elara finally completed the device. It was a small, handheld crystal lantern. When she activated it, a bright, warm light filled the area around her. She was overjoyed. She could now continue her studies at her own pace. As she resumed reading the scrolls, Elara came across something that gave her pause. There were warnings in some of the texts about the misuse of knowledge. The Atlanteans had seen the potential for destruction if their knowledge was used without wisdom and compassion. They had witnessed the rise of factions within their own society that had sought to use their advanced technologies for power and conquest, which had ultimately led to their downfall. Elara realized that she had to be extremely careful about how she shared the Atlantean knowledge. She couldn't just unleash it on the world without proper safeguards. She needed to find a way to ensure that the knowledge was used for the betterment of humanity and the preservation of the planet. She decided to create a set of guidelines, a code of ethics, if you will, that would accompany the dissemination of the Atlantean wisdom. This code would emphasize the importance of using knowledge for the common good, respecting nature, and promoting harmony among all beings. As she thought about how to implement this, Elara realized that she couldn't do it alone. She needed the help of others, scholars, leaders, and people from all walks of life who shared her vision. She thought about her village, the people she knew there. They were simple, kind-hearted folk who would likely be receptive to the idea of using the Atlantean knowledge for good. She also thought about the larger world. She would need to reach out to universities, research institutions, and governments. But she knew that this would be a daunting task. There would be those who would be skeptical, and there would surely be those who would try to use the knowledge for their own gain. Elara decided that her first step would be to return to her village. She would share what she had learned with the elder, Grayson. He was a wise man, respected by all in the village. His guidance would be invaluable in formulating a plan to share the Atlantean wisdom in a responsible way. But before she left, she wanted to make a copy of some of the most important scrolls. She found a room in the library filled with ancient writing materials, parchment, quills, and ink made from natural substances. She spent the next few days painstakingly copying the scrolls, translating the ancient language into a more modern one as she went. As she worked, Lumos would often come and sit beside her, as if offering its silent support. The library, which had once seemed like a cold, dusty place of forgotten knowledge, now felt like a second home to Elara. She had formed a deep connection with this place and the wisdom it held. Finally, after days of hard work, Elara had copied and translated several of the most crucial scrolls. She carefully packed them in a satchel, along with the crystal lantern. She then said goodbye to the library, promising to return one day to learn more. With Lumos by her side, Elara retraced her steps through the corridor, up the spiral staircase, and through the various chambers and corridors of the building. When she reached the large door at the entrance, she placed her hand on the symbols, and the door opened. The shadowy figures were waiting for her outside. They looked at her with their glowing red eyes, as if trying to read her thoughts. "You have spent much time in the library," the lead figure said. "Have you learned what you came for?" Elara nodded. I have. And I have a new mission. I want to share the wisdom of the Atlanteans with the world, but in a way that honors their legacy and ensures it is used for good. The lead figure seemed to consider her words. Then it said, "The path you have chosen is a difficult one, but it is a worthy one. We will help you on your journey. Whenever you are in need, call upon us, and we will come." With those words, the shadowy figures disappeared into the ruins of the city. Elara took a deep breath and started her journey back through the city, towards the forest. As she walked, she thought about the challenges that lay ahead. But she was also filled with a sense of hope and determination. She knew that sharing the Atlantean wisdom could change the world, and she was ready to do whatever it took to make that happen. The journey through the forest was long but uneventful. Elara and Lumos walked side by side, following the path that she had come on. The forest, which had once seemed so mysterious and full of unknowns, now felt like an old friend. The trees seemed to sway in the breeze as if cheering her on. Finally, after what seemed like days, Elara emerged from the forest and saw her village in the distance. The sight of the familiar cottages and the friendly faces of the villagers filled her with a sense of warmth and comfort. She knew that her life was about to change in ways she could never have imagined, but she was ready to face the future with the wisdom of the Atlanteans as her guide. As she walked into the village, the villagers gathered around her, curious about her long absence. Elara smiled at them, her heart filled with love for these simple people. She knew that they would be the first step in her journey to share the Atlantean wisdom with the world. And with that thought in mind, she began to tell them the story of her adventure, the discovery of the Forgotten Library of Atlantis, and the knowledge that she had gained. The villagers listened with rapt attention, their eyes wide with wonder and excitement. And so, Elara's new mission began, right there in the heart of her beloved village. Chapter 5: Spreading the Atlantean Legacy in the Village and Beyond. Elara's return to the village with the tale of the Forgotten Library of Atlantis and the wisdom she'd unearthed was met with a mix of awe, disbelief, and excitement. The villagers gathered around her in the town square, their eyes fixed on her as she spoke. Children sat cross-legged on the ground, their faces alight with curiosity, while the elders listened intently, their brows furrowed in thought. Elara began by recounting her journey through the forest, the discovery of the strange tree with crystal formations, and the encounters with the mysterious creatures. As she described the lost city of Atlantis and its magnificent architecture, the villagers gasped in wonder. When she finally came to the part about the library and the ancient knowledge she had found there, the square fell silent, as if everyone was holding their breath. After she finished speaking, there was a moment of stunned silence. Then, the questions began to pour in. Is this all true? Elara?" asked a young boy, his eyes wide with wonder. "How can such a place exist, hidden for so long?" An elder queried, stroking his long beard. Elara smiled and showed them the copied and translated scrolls she had brought back. "It's all true," she said. "And this knowledge can change our lives, for the better." The Atlanteans knew so much about harmony with nature, about using energy in a way that doesn't harm the earth, and about living in balance. The village elder, Grayson, stepped forward. He had always been a respected figure in the village, known for his wisdom and level-headedness. "Elara, this is a remarkable discovery," he said. "But we must be cautious. Such knowledge can be a double-edged sword. We need to ensure it is used wisely." Elara nodded. "That's exactly what I've been thinking, Grayson. I've come up with a code of ethics, a set of guidelines, to make sure the Atlantean wisdom is used for the common good. But I need your help, and the help of everyone in the village, to start spreading this knowledge in a responsible way." Grayson considered her words for a moment. "Well, first, we need to understand this knowledge ourselves. We should start by forming a study group. The younger ones can help with the translations, and the elders can provide their insights based on their life experiences." The villagers agreed, and over the next few days, a study group was formed. They met in the village hall every evening, poring over the scrolls that Elara had brought back. As they delved into the Atlantean wisdom, they were amazed at the practical applications it held. One of the scrolls described a method of natural pest control using certain plants that repelled insects. The villagers decided to try this method in their fields. They planted the recommended plants around their crops, and within days, they noticed a significant reduction in the number of pests. This simple application of Atlantean knowledge was a huge success, and it gave the villagers more confidence in the wisdom of the lost civilization. Another scroll talked about a way to purify water using natural minerals. The village had always struggled with obtaining clean water during the dry seasons. The men in the village set out to find the minerals described in the scroll and built a simple water purification system. It worked like a charm, and the villagers now had access to clean, fresh water even when the wells ran low. As the study group continued their work, Elara realized that they needed to share this knowledge with other villages. She decided to organize a series of workshops, inviting neighboring villages to send representatives to learn about the Atlantean wisdom. The first workshop was held in a large clearing near the village. Representatives from 5 neighboring villages arrived, filled with curiosity and a bit of skepticism. Elara and the members of the study group took turns presenting the knowledge they had gained from the scrolls. They demonstrated the natural pest control method, the water purification system, and also talked about the Atlantean views on sustainable living. The representatives were initially hesitant, but as they saw the practical demonstrations, their skepticism began to fade. One of the representatives, a young woman named Arya from a village known for its struggling agriculture, was particularly interested in the pest control method. "This could really save our crops," she said. "We've been using harsh chemicals, but they're expensive and they're starting to damage the soil." After the workshop, the representatives returned to their villages with the knowledge and a promise to start implementing the Atlantean methods. Elara knew that this was just the beginning. She needed to reach a wider audience, to spread the word beyond the local villages. She decided to write letters to the universities in the larger cities. In her letters, she described the discovery of the Forgotten Library of Atlantis, the knowledge she had found there, and the code of ethics she had developed. She invited the scholars at the universities to come and study the scrolls, to help in further translating and understanding the Atlantean wisdom. A few weeks passed, and Elara started to receive responses. Some of the scholars were intrigued and expressed a desire to visit the village. Others were more skeptical, dismissing her claims as the ramblings of a naive young woman. But Elara didn't let the negative responses discourage her. She was determined to prove that the Atlantean wisdom was real and could change the world. When the first group of scholars arrived at the village, they were greeted with a warm welcome. Elara showed them the scrolls, explained the journey she had taken to find the library, and shared the experiences of the village in applying the Atlantean knowledge. The scholars were initially cautious, but as they began to study the scrolls, their interest grew. One of the scholars, a middle-aged man named Professor Marcus, was an expert in ancient languages. He was immediately fascinated by the script on the scrolls. "This is a truly remarkable discovery," he said. "The language is like nothing I've ever seen before, but there are elements of it that seem to be related to some of the ancient tongues we've studied. It will take a long time to fully decipher, but I believe it holds great potential." Another scholar, a young botanist named Dr. Lilly, was interested in the agricultural knowledge in the scrolls. "The methods described here could revolutionize sustainable farming," she said. "We've been looking for natural, environmentally friendly ways to increase crop yields, and this could be the answer." Over the next few months, the scholars worked closely with the villagers and Elara. They helped in further translating the scrolls, and together, they started to develop more comprehensive plans for spreading the Atlantean wisdom. They organized more workshops, this time on a larger scale, inviting farmers, environmentalists, and scientists from all over the region. As the word spread, more and more people became interested in the Atlantean wisdom, Elara found herself in the middle of a growing movement. But she also faced challenges. There were those who were more interested in the potential power and profit that could come from the Atlantean knowledge rather than its ethical applications. One day, a group of wealthy merchants visited the village. They offered Elara a large sum of money to sell them the rights to the Atlantean technologies. "Think of the wealth we could create," one of the merchants said. "We could mass produce these water purification systems and make a fortune." Elara was appalled. "This knowledge is not for sale," she said firmly. "It's meant to be shared for the betterment of all. If you use it only for profit, you'll be going against the very principles of the Atlanteans." The merchants left, angry and disappointed. But Elara knew that she had made the right decision. She couldn't let the Atlantean wisdom be misused. She needed to be vigilant and ensure that the code of ethics she had developed was followed. As time went on, Elara and her allies continued to spread the Atlantean wisdom. They faced more obstacles along the way, such as resistance from some traditional scientists who were reluctant to accept knowledge from an unknown ancient civilization. But they also had many victories. More and more communities started to adopt the Atlantean methods, and the concept of living in harmony with nature and using knowledge for the common good began to take root. Elara, with Lumos always by her side, traveled from place to place, sharing the story of the Forgotten Library of Atlantis and the wisdom it held. She knew that the journey was far from over. There was still so much work to be done, so many people to reach. But she was filled with hope. The Atlantean legacy was starting to spread, and she was determined to see it change the world for the better. One evening, as Elara sat on a hill overlooking the village, she reflected on the journey so far. The village, which had once been a small, sleepy place, was now a hub of activity, filled with people coming and going, sharing knowledge and ideas. She looked at Lumos, who was lying beside her, and smiled. "We've come a long way," she said. "But there's still so much more to do." And with that thought, she looked out at the horizon, ready to face the next challenges in her quest to spread the Atlantean wisdom far and wide. Chapter 6: Navigating the Tides of Change. Facing Global Challenges. The spread of Atlantean wisdom had ignited a spark that was quickly catching fire across regions. But with its growing popularity came a maelstrom of complex challenges on a much larger scale. Elara, now a well-known figure in the growing movement, found herself at the epicenter of these new trials. As the news of the Atlantean knowledge reached the ears of powerful corporations and governments, their interests were piqued, but not always for the right reasons. Some governments were concerned about the potential impact on their existing energy and agricultural policies. They saw the Atlantean inspired sustainable energy and farming methods as a threat to their established industries and power structures. Elara was summoned to a meeting with a group of government officials from a large neighboring country. The meeting room was filled with a tense atmosphere as she entered. The officials, dressed in their formal attire, looked at her with a mix of curiosity and suspicion. "Ms. Elara," began a stern-looking man at the head of the table, "we've heard about these so-called Atlantean methods you've been spreading. But we're worried about the implications. Our country has a significant investment in traditional energy sources, and these new ideas could disrupt our entire energy market." Elara took a deep breath. She had expected such concerns but was determined to make them understand. "Sir, the Atlantean energy methods are not about disruption but about creating a more sustainable future. Yes, there will be a transition, but the long-term benefits are far-reaching. It will reduce our dependence on finite resources, improve the environment, and create new economic opportunities in the renewable energy sector." Another official chimed in, "And what about agriculture? Our farmers are used to certain practices, and suddenly changing to these Atlantean-inspired methods could be risky. What guarantee do we have that it will work on a large scale?" Elara smiled. "We've already seen successful implementations in the villages. The Atlantean agricultural methods are based on centuries-old wisdom of working with nature. They enhance soil fertility, reduce the need for harmful chemicals, and can lead to more stable crop yields. We can start with pilot projects in your country to prove their effectiveness." The officials were hesitant but agreed to consider the idea of pilot projects. Elara knew that this was just the beginning of a long and arduous process of convincing governments to embrace the Atlantean wisdom. Meanwhile, the corporate world was also eyeing the Atlantean technologies. Large multinational corporations saw the potential for huge profits in patenting and monopolizing these new ideas. A group of corporate lobbyists approached Elara with offers that were hard to refuse on the surface. "Ms. Elara," said a smooth-talking lobbyist, "our company is willing to invest heavily in developing and promoting the Atlantean-inspired products. We can make this knowledge accessible to the world, but we need exclusive rights to these technologies." Elara was firm in her refusal. "These technologies are not for private profit, making in such a way. The Atlantean wisdom was meant to be shared freely for the betterment of all. If you're interested in promoting it, we can work together under the code of ethics that ensures fairness and sustainability." The lobbyists left, frustrated, but Elara knew she couldn't compromise on the principles of the Atlantean legacy. On the scientific front, while many young and open-minded scientists were excited about the Atlantean knowledge, there was also a faction of more traditional scientists who were skeptical. They claimed that the so-called Atlantean wisdom was nothing more than unproven theories and that there was no scientific basis for it. Elara decided to organize an international scientific conference to showcase the evidence and practical applications of the Atlantean knowledge. She invited scientists from all over the world, along with representatives from the villages that had successfully implemented the Atlantean methods. At the conference, Elara started with a presentation about the discovery of the Forgotten Library of Atlantis, the scrolls, and the journey that had led to the spread of this knowledge. Then, she invited the village representatives to share their experiences. A farmer from one of the villages took the stage. Before we started using the Atlantean pest control methods, he said, our crops were constantly being damaged by pests. We were spending a fortune on pesticides, and the soil was getting more and more infertile. But since we started using the natural plants recommended in the Atlantean scrolls, our crops have never been healthier. We've saved money, and the environment has benefited too. Next, a scientist who had been working with the village on the energy-related aspects presented the data. We've been able to measure significant improvements in energy efficiency using the Atlantean inspired energy storage and conversion techniques. These methods are not only effective but also have a much lower environmental impact compared to traditional methods. The presentations were followed by a question and answer session. Some of the skeptical scientists were still not convinced, but many others were starting to see the potential. A young scientist from a developing country stood up. I think this is a game changer, especially for countries like mine. We've always struggled with energy poverty and environmental degradation. These Atlantean methods could be the solution we've been looking for. As the conference progressed, Elara could see that the tide was slowly turning. More and more scientists were showing interest in collaborating on further research and development of the Atlantean knowledge. However, there was another challenge brewing on the social front. As the Atlantean wisdom spread, there were cultural differences and resistance in some regions. In some conservative communities, the idea of adopting new, foreign-sounding methods was met with resistance. They were worried about losing their traditional ways of life and cultural identities. Elara decided to address these concerns by promoting cultural integration. She worked with anthropologists and cultural experts to develop programs that would show how the Atlantean wisdom could coexist and even enhance local cultures. In one such community, they organized a festival that combined the local cultural traditions with the Atlantean-inspired ideas. There were traditional music and dance performances, along with demonstrations of the Atlantean agricultural and energy-saving methods. The community members were initially hesitant, but as they saw how these new ideas could be integrated into their daily lives without sacrificing their cultural values, they started to warm up to the concept. Back in the village, Elara and her team continued to refine the code of ethics and develop educational programs. They created online courses and training materials to make the Atlantean knowledge more accessible to people around the world. The village had become a center of learning, with students and researchers from different countries coming to study and collaborate. One day, Elara received news that a group of activists, inspired by the Atlantean wisdom, had organized a large-scale protest in a major city. They were demanding that governments and corporations take more action to implement sustainable practices based on the Atlantean principles. While Elara was heartened by the enthusiasm, she was also worried that the protest could turn violent and give the movement a bad name. She immediately traveled to the city to meet with the activists. When she arrived, she found a large group of people gathered in the city square, holding signs and chanting slogans. She made her way to the front of the crowd and asked for a chance to speak. "Friends," she said, "I understand your passion and your desire for change. But we need to make sure our actions are peaceful and constructive. The Atlantean wisdom is about harmony and balance, even in the face of resistance. Let's work together to engage with the authorities and the corporations in a dialogue, rather than resorting to violence." The activists listened to her words. After some discussion, they agreed to tone down the protest and focus on peaceful negotiations. Elara knew that she had to be more involved in guiding the growing movement, to ensure that it stayed true to the Atlantean principles. As the days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, Elara continued to travel, to advocate, and to educate. She faced setbacks and victories along the way. But through it all, her determination to spread the Atlantean wisdom and create a more sustainable and harmonious world remained unshaken. She knew that the road ahead was long and filled with obstacles, but with the support of her allies, the wisdom of the Atlanteans, and the growing global community that believed in the cause, she was ready to face whatever came her way. One evening, as she sat in her small cottage in the village, looking out at the stars, she thought about the journey so far. Lumos lay at her feet, content. "There's still so much to do," she whispered to herself. "But we're making a difference, one step at a time." And with that thought, she closed her eyes, dreaming of a future where the Atlantean wisdom had truly transformed the world. Chapter 7: The Global Convergence, Building a Sustainable Future. The growing movement centered around the Atlantean wisdom was at a crossroads. The efforts to spread this ancient knowledge had both supporters and detractors, and Elara was determined to steer it towards a path of global acceptance and positive change. With the various challenges in different sectors, political, corporate, scientific, and social, she knew that a unified approach was needed. Elara decided to convene a global summit. She reached out to governments, corporations, scientists, and representatives from different cultures, inviting them to come together in a neutral location to discuss the future of the Atlantean wisdom. The response was overwhelming. People from all corners of the world, intrigued by the potential of this ancient knowledge, expressed their willingness to participate. The summit was held in a large, modern conference center nestled in a valley, surrounded by lush greenery. As the delegates started to arrive, the air was filled with a sense of anticipation. Elara greeted each one with a warm smile, knowing that this was a crucial moment for the movement. The summit began with an opening ceremony. Elara took the stage, her heart pounding with a mix of nervousness and excitement. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, "we are gathered here today at a pivotal moment. The wisdom of the Atlanteans, long hidden in the depths of the Forgotten Library, has the potential to reshape our world. But for this to happen, we need to work together, transcending our differences." She then presented an overview of the Atlantean knowledge, highlighting its key aspects such as sustainable energy, harmonious agriculture, and spiritual balance. Videos and testimonials from the villages and communities that had already implemented the Atlantean methods were shown, demonstrating the real-world impact. After Elara's presentation, the floor was opened for discussions. A government official from a developing country stood up. "We see the potential of this knowledge for our nation. But we lack the resources and infrastructure to implement these methods on a large scale. We need support from the international community." A representative from a large corporation also voiced his thoughts. "We recognize the value of the Atlantean wisdom, but we need a clear legal and economic framework. How can we invest in this knowledge while ensuring fairness and sustainability?" Scientists, on the other hand, were more focused on research and development. "We need to conduct more in-depth studies to fully understand the scientific principles behind the Atlantean methods," said a renowned physicist. "This will help us refine and improve these technologies." Over the next few days, the delegates engaged in intense discussions, workshops, and negotiations. Elara moved from one group to another, listening, mediating, and offering solutions. In the energy-focused sessions, they discussed how to create a global network for sharing the Atlantean-inspired energy technologies. This would involve developed countries providing financial and technical assistance to developing countries to build sustainable energy infrastructure. In the agricultural workshops, experts from different countries shared their experiences and ideas on adapting the Atlantean farming methods to various climates and terrains. They agreed on the need for a global database of agricultural knowledge, where farmers could share their successes and challenges in implementing the Atlantean techniques. The corporate representatives, after much debate, agreed on a set of ethical guidelines for the use of Atlantean-inspired products. These guidelines would ensure that the knowledge was not monopolized for profit but was made accessible to all. In return for their investment in research and development, they would receive certain incentives, such as tax breaks and preferential treatment in international trade for sustainable products. The cultural and social aspects were also given due importance. Anthropologists and cultural leaders proposed the creation of cultural exchange programs. These programs would facilitate the integration of the Atlantean wisdom into different cultural contexts, ensuring that it was respected and adapted in a way that enhanced local traditions. As the summit progressed, a sense of unity started to emerge. The delegates realized that by working together, they could overcome the challenges and fully realize the potential of the Atlantean wisdom. A plan was formulated, which included short-term, medium-term, and long-term goals. In the short term, pilot projects would be launched in different countries to demonstrate the effectiveness of the Atlantean methods on a larger scale. These projects would cover various sectors, from energy and agriculture to education and healthcare. The results of these pilot projects would be closely monitored and shared with the international community. In the medium term, a global research consortium would be established. Scientists from different countries would collaborate on in-depth studies of the Atlantean knowledge. They would focus on areas such as improving the efficiency of energy capture devices, developing new agricultural practices based on Atlantean principles, and understanding the spiritual and psychological aspects of the Atlantean way of life. In the long term, the goal was to create a world where the Atlantean wisdom was an integral part of global policies and practices. This would involve integrating the principles of sustainability, harmony, and balance into all aspects of human life, from governance and economics to daily living. As the summit came to an end, Elara addressed the delegates one last time. Today, we have taken a giant step forward. We have shown that when we come together, we can overcome any obstacle. The Atlantean wisdom is not just a relic of the past but a blueprint for our future. Let us go back to our respective countries and communities and work towards building a sustainable and harmonious world. The delegates left the summit with a new sense of purpose. Elara, too, returned to the village, filled with hope and determination. Back in the village, the residents were eager to hear about the outcomes of the summit. Elara gathered them in the town square and shared the details. The summit was a great success, she said. We've laid the foundation for a global movement. But the real work starts now. We need to be actively involved in the pilot projects and continue to share our knowledge and experiences." The villagers cheered, ready to play their part. Over the next few months, the village became a hub of activity once again. Teams of scientists, engineers, and researchers arrived to start the local pilot projects. They worked with the villagers to implement the Atlantean-inspired energy systems, improve the agricultural practices, and develop educational programs. In the energy sector, they installed more advanced crystal-based energy capture devices, based on the latest research from the summit. These devices were more efficient and could store larger amounts of energy. The villagers were trained to maintain and operate these devices, and soon, the village became almost completely self-sufficient in energy. In agriculture, they experimented with new crop varieties and farming techniques inspired by the Atlantean scrolls. The results were promising. The crops were more resistant to diseases, and the yields increased significantly. The village also started to export its organic produce, using the reputation of the Atlantean-inspired farming methods to gain a competitive edge in the market. The educational programs in the village were also expanded. They now included courses on the Atlantean wisdom for people of all ages. Children were taught about the importance of living in harmony with nature, while adults learned about the practical applications of the Atlantean knowledge in their daily lives and work. As the news of the village's success spread, more and more communities around the world were inspired to follow suit. They reached out to the village, asking for advice and support in implementing the Atlantean methods. Elara and the villagers were happy to help. They started to organize training programs and exchange visits, sharing their knowledge and experiences with others. However, not everything was smooth sailing. There were still some who opposed the spread of the Atlantean wisdom. Some religious groups, for example, saw the spiritual aspects of the Atlantean knowledge as a threat to their beliefs. They launched campaigns against the movement, spreading misinformation and fear. Elara decided to address these concerns head-on. She engaged in dialogue with the leaders of these religious groups. She explained that the Atlantean wisdom was not meant to replace any existing beliefs but was rather a complementary set of ideas that could help people live more fulfilling lives. In one such dialogue, she said, "The Atlantean view of spirituality is about connecting with the universe, with all living things. It's a view that can coexist with your religious teachings. In fact, it can enhance your understanding of the divine, as it emphasizes the unity and harmony of all creation." Slowly but surely, some of the religious groups started to see the value in what Elara was saying. They agreed to stop their opposition and instead explore how the Atlantean wisdom could be integrated into their spiritual practices in a respectful way. As time passed, the global movement based on the Atlantean wisdom continued to grow. More and more countries were implementing the pilot projects, and the results were being shared and analyzed. The Global Research Consortium was making significant progress in understanding the scientific principles behind the Atlantean methods. Elara, now a respected leader in the movement, continued to travel the world. She attended international conferences, visited communities that were implementing the Atlantean wisdom, and inspired others to join the cause. She knew that the journey was far from over, but she was confident that with the support of the global community, they could create a world where the Atlantean wisdom was a guiding light for a sustainable and harmonious future. One day, as she stood on a hill overlooking a city that had successfully implemented the Atlantean inspired energy and environmental policies, she felt a sense of pride. The city was a model of sustainability, with clean energy sources powering its buildings, green spaces everywhere, and a community that was actively involved in maintaining the balance. Lumos, who had accompanied her on this journey, sat at her feet, looking up at her with its bright eyes. "We've come a long way," Elara said to Lumos. "But there's still so much more to do. The world is changing, and we're a part of this great transformation." And with that, she took a deep breath and looked towards the horizon, ready to face the next challenges and opportunities in the quest to spread the Atlantean wisdom.